You had a conversation. Maybe it lasted 30 seconds, and then you looked up and 3 hours were gone. You weren't sleeping, you weren't even really thinking. You were just somewhere else, and you have no idea where the time went or why that particular moment required the complete evacuation of your afternoon. That's not anxiety. That's actually not a character flaw. That's a specific biological sequence your cells initiated. And today I'm going to show you exactly what it is, why it happens, and what you can actually do about it. My name is Dr. Scott Scher, and today here's what we're covering. First, what actually is happening in your body during those lost hours, and why the explanation that has nothing to do, actually, with your personality or your mental health history. Second, the cellular mechanisms running this show, one your immune system, your nervous system, and your mitochondria are all involved in, whether you consented to it or not. Third, why most common things people do to snap out of this actually make it worse. And finally, both the short-term tools to interrupt the spiral and the longer-term foundation that stops it from happening as often as possible. Because there's a difference, and knowing which one you need in the moment matters a lot. And before we get into the biology, I want to flag something I'll come back to later that genuinely changed how I see this. The state your body enters during those lost hours, it's the same state your cells use to survive a physical threat. Same mechanism, same cellular hardware, which means your body isn't overreacting. It's doing exactly what it is evolved to do, just in a context where it's approximately 0% helpful. And more on that shortly. Okay, picture this. You're in a meeting, or in a group text, or a family dinner, and you say something not catastrophic, not cruel, just wrong enough or poorly timed enough or received badly enough that you feel it the moment it lands. With a thud, right? Maybe someone's expression shifted. Maybe the reply didn't come. Maybe the room just moved a little too quickly or just something feel a little off. And then you're back at your desk or in your car or lying in bed, and it's hours later and you've read that same email 4 times without absorbing a single word. Your chest feels hollowed out. Your motivation, which was completely fine this morning, is now gone. You're not sad exactly. You're not anxious exactly. You're just not there. Flat, empty, present in the room, absent from your own life. You've lost the afternoon again. And now, you have no idea why. Here's what I want to name gently. That there's usually something underneath that moment, not just the words that were said or the silence that followed, but a deeper signal. A signal that somewhere in that transaction, something about you felt exposed, insufficient, caught. It doesn't have to be dramatic. It doesn't have to involve a fight or formal humiliation. Sometimes it's just a look, a pause. That's interesting with absolutely no warmth behind it. The content of the moment almost doesn't matter. What matters is the signal your nervous system received and what it decided to do with it next. We are social animals as humans. We want to belong to the group. If we were asked or if we were ostracized and we're out of the group, we might not survive. And this goes back to our evolutionary program for thousands and hundreds of thousands or millions of years. Now here's where things get interesting and where most people's understanding of what's completely happening actually falls apart. Because what follows that moment isn't just emotional. Something physically initiates. Your body, not your mind, your body receives that signal and begins a coordinated multi-system response. Your immune system is involved. Your nervous system is involved. The mitochondria in every single cell of your body are involved. There's only one type of cell in your body that does not have mitochondria. It's your red blood cells. Every other cell does. Thousands of mitochondria in some, like your brain, your heart, your reproductive organs, and your musculoskeletal system. And here's the part I'll unpack in a few minutes, so stay with me, that I think you'll genuinely change how you see this. Your cells cannot tell the difference between a social threat and a physical one. They use the same alarm system, same hardware, same alarm, completely different occasion, which means that the lost afternoon isn't a personality quirk, it's a biological event. So here's the order that actually matters. We're going to start at the cellular level, because if you don't start and understand that foundation, the rest is just word salad, really. It just doesn't make a lot of sense, and it's not going to land. Then we'll look at the nervous system, what it does with the cellular signal. Then we'll cover where people go wrong when they try to fix it. And then short-term tools for the moment you're in, and then long-term tools for making the whole thing less likely, in that order. So here we go. Let's start with a researcher named Dr. Robert Navio at UC San Diego. He spent years studying what happens inside cells when they detect a threat, any threat. What he found is something called the cell danger response, and it reframes almost everything about what we feel the way about certain moments. Here's the core of it. When you have cells sensing danger, biological, chemical, physical, or psychological, they do something remarkable. They leak ATP, adenosine triphosphate, our energy currency, into the space outside of our cells. Now, inside the cell, ATP is your energy resource and currency. It powers literally everything that you do, muscle, brain, immune system. But outside the cell, ATP is a completely different job. Outside the cell, it's a flare, like a flare in the air. It binds to receptors throughout your body and broadcasts one message: danger is present, do not stand down. Think of it like this. Inside the cell, ATP is money. Outside the cell, it's a 911 call. Same molecule, completely different meaning depending on where it is. And when that 911 call goes out, everything responds. Your immune system activates, inflammation rises. Your vagus nerve, the superhighway between your body and your brain that calms down the firing, it's your relaxation highway really, carries the message upwards, and your nervous system shifts into defensive posture, not gradually, automatically. You don't vote on this. Your vagus nerve basically shuts down, and you go into sympathetic activation, which is your fight or flight nervous system. Now, and this is the part I promised you, your cells cannot distinguish between a tiger and a moment that felt socially exposing. The same extracellular ATP signal fires, the same 911 calls out, and then because evolutionarily being rejected by the group was a death sentence, as I was talking about earlier, social threat and physical threat ran through the same hardware because for most of human history, they had the same consequences. Your body hasn't gotten the memo that it's 2026 and the stakes of a bad meeting are just somewhat lower, right? Which brings me to the thing I wanted to mention earlier. The part that is, and I say this with genuine medical affection, one of the most unhinged things the human body does, and also completely correct, coming up in a moment. I'm going to talk about that. So the alarm is broadcasting. Your nervous system, receiving the signal, moves through its hierarchy of responses. You might first go into mobilization, that anxious, restless, can't sit still energy. But if the threat signal continues and strong enough, or if your system isn't already depleted, if the system is already depleted, the nervous system reaches for its oldest, deepest tool: shutdown. Your heart rate drops, your facial expression flattens, your cognition slows, motivation disappears. The body has decided at a cellular level that the threat is too large to fight or to run from, and the safest thing to do is to go completely still and wait it out. Like a phone that drops to ultra-low power mode when the battery hits 5%. Except the battery is your sense of self, and that charge is nowhere in sight. That's your lost afternoon. Your cells pull the alarm, your nervous system downshifted into conservation mode, and your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain that can reason, plan, and function like an adult, well, it goes offline. You weren't being weak. You weren't being dramatic. You weren't running what you really were doing, you were running the most ancient threat response program on Earth. So here's what most people do when they notice the flares or the flatness come on, or when they're already deep in it. They try to think their way out of it. They replay the conversation, look for the moment they could have handled differently. They journal. They call a friend to process it. They tell themselves it wasn't a big deal. They reframe. They remind themselves of their value. And sometimes that helps later when the system has calmed down enough to actually accept the input. But in the acute phase, trying to cognitively process a shutdown state is like trying to have a nuanced conversation with a fire alarm. The alarm is not listening to your reframe. It has one job, and it's doing it. The second misstep, especially common in the optimization and wellness space, is to reach for activation, the cold plunge, the intense workout, the aggressive breath work. The instinct is to shock the system back online. And I'll explain in exactly a minute why this can actually make things considerably worse, not occasionally, but predictably, based on what's happening at the cellular level. This is where the parasympathetic edge comes in. I want to be precise about what this phrase actually means, because it's not what most people think. The parasympathetic edge isn't calmness. It's not lying in a hammock while someone fans you with a leaf. It's the biological capacity to shift into recovery mode, stay there long enough for your system to actually complete something, and then return to full function without leaving a residue of stress that makes the next alarm louder. And it's built in a sequence, not all at once. The first step is almost the step that almost everybody skips, which is cellular energy. And I talk about this a lot in my videos and in blogs. It's called the sympathetic spiral of doom. And the first step is to really work on cellular energy. You cannot regulate a nervous system that doesn't have enough fuel to be regulated, meaning that you need to have enough energy to not be anxious. You need to have enough energy to not have the response that we're talking about here. Think of it like a car engine that keeps stalling. Turning the key isn't the answer. like breath work, meditation, cold exposure, the same kind of thing, right? But if the fuel tank is empty, you're not going to go anywhere. The dorsal vagal shutdown state is in part a low energy state. Your body is conserving what little it has. Once there's enough cellular energy to work with, the next step is rebuilding your brain's inhibitory tone. This is your GABA system. Think of GABA as the voluntary knob on your nervous system. The alarm pulled the alarm pulled the volume all the way up. GABA is how you turn it back down. Not enough? Down. To a level where you can actually function. Then and only then do you build autonomic flexibility, the ability to balance your sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system, the ability to move between states, between mobilized and recovered, without getting stuck at either end. Applied before the energy and the GABA foundations are in place, nervous system tools are likely trying to teach you how to swim while you are trying to swim, but you never learned how to swim. The timing is just wrong. So let's make this practical. And I want to split this into two categories because they really serve different moments. When you're in it, when you're actually in this state, there's short-term tools that can help you. The goal here is not to fix the underlying system. The goal is to signal safety to a nervous system that is currently convinced you are in mortal danger because of an email. And it sounds crazy, but I know all of you have been there. I know I have. Extended exhale breathing is your fastest on-ramp. A 4-count, 6 to 8 count exhale. So 4-count inhale, 6 to 8 count exhale, done for just a few moments, few minutes really. Directly activates the vagal brake and begins to shift the nervous system out of shutdown. It's not glamorous, but it works because it speaks the nervous system's native language. Physiology, not psychology. Orienting here. So literally slowly turning your head and visually taking in your environment. Signals to your threat detection system that the space you're in is safe. It sounds almost insultingly simple. It works anyway. Safe social contract. A calm conversation with somebody who isn't part of the situation is one of the fastest co-regulatory tools we have. Your nervous system literally borrows regulation from theirs, kind of stealing it. Say sorry later, but you needed it at the moment, right? You can also use things like that work on the GABA system, GABA supplementation, but you can't use GABA itself because GABA is too big of a molecule to get into the brain. Remember that. So you need to use other things. If GABA supplements work for you, this could mean you have a leaky brain, and that's for a different video. You can check out more of that on the Transcriptions blog at transcriptions.com/blog. Now, long game, you need to build your foundation. This is where the framework called health optimization medicine comes in and what I use in my clinical practice. The core physiology, core philosophy really is this. We don't wait for a full breakdown to intervene. We find the cellular imbalances quietly degrading your function before they have names on them. Concretely, that means looking at mitochondrial function, cellular energy production, because a system that runs on depleted energy substrate will trigger shutdown faster, harder, and over smaller provocations. I've found that methylene blue here is one of those amazing things that can help very much right now, just like the GABAergic things. And it can help start working on electron transport chain function, mitochondrial function. It's not a stimulant. It really does work for infrastructure support. But it's not the only thing you're going to have to do here. You're going to have to work on optimizing vitamins, minerals, nutrients, lifestyle, diet, mindset, meditation. But using methylene blue can be one of these very short-term ways to help, as I described, as optimizing the GABAergic system. You have to also look at sleep architecture here, light exposure, nutrient sufficiency, toxic burden. I do this all in clinical practice because each of these has a potential cell danger response trigger that keeps the alarm system really just hair trigger sensitive. When the baseline is optimized, though, those provocations that used to erase your afternoon start to lose grip. Which brings me to why sequence matters more than any individual tool, and why doing these things in the wrong order is one of the most common reasons most people feel like nothing works for them. 30 seconds on this before we close. Let's go back to the meeting, the moment where something landed wrong and the afternoon disappeared. Here's what that looks like now with this framework in place. You feel the alarm arrive, that hollow, deflating sensation. Instead of fighting it, or trying to reason your way through it, you recognize it for what it is. Your cells just pulled the alarm. Again, that ATP came out, call 911. Your nervous system downshifted. This is biology. It doesn't have to be biography. You don't reach for activation. You don't replay the same conversation on a loop. You do the small things that allow you to feel safe. Slow breaths, a few minutes outside, a low stakes conversation with someone else. Take some something that's going to calm down your nervous system if you need it. I love ChurroCalm by Transcriptions, my company. It really does work in a pinch within about 15 minutes. You meet the system where it is rather than demanding it perform. The alarm quiets because you stopped adding fuel to the signal, and the afternoon, maybe not all of it, but most of it might come back. Not because you got stronger, but because you stopped fighting the wrong thing. Here's what I want to leave you with. Those lost hours aren't evidence of fragility. They're evidence of a nervous system doing exactly what it was designed to do, protecting you from a threat it couldn't distinguish from the real thing. The work isn't to stop the alarm from firing, from ever firing. It's going to fire. The work is to build a system with enough energy, enough inhibitory tone, enough autonomic flexibility going back from sympathetic and parasympathetic to hear the alarm, respond appropriately, and find its way back without leaving a residue that makes the next one louder. Your body isn't broken. It's defending itself. And that distinction changes everything. Thank you so much for listening. If you'd like more information, check out Transcriptions blog, where I write a whole thing about the sympathetic spiral of doom. If you like this video, don't forget to like and subscribe below, and we'll see you next week.